The T-Rex of political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're now simulcasting the second half of this Monday, June 21st, 2010, radio transmission at prisonplanet.tv. So if you want to see us in living color, not just hear us on the radio, go over to prisonplanet.tv. Of course, the other websites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Rahm Emanuel expected to quit White House, stepping down as corruption scandals intensify surrounding him, like BP paying for his $1 million a year apartment for many, many years, or $1 million apartment. U.S.-Israeli warships in Suez may be prelude to face off with Iran. This out of the Israeli National News. Arutz Shaviv, or Shiva. Continuing, that's also in Haaretz, as well as the Jerusalem Post, are reporting on the same development. Armada of U.S. and Israeli warships head for Iran. More than 12 U.S. and Israeli warships, including an aircraft carrier, passed through the Suez Canal last Friday and are headed for the Red Sea, according to eyewitnesses. The U.S. battleships were the largest to have crossed the canal in many years, reported the London-based newspaper. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported Egyptian opposition members criticized the government for cooperating with the United States and Israeli forces and allowing the passage of the ships through the Egyptian territorial waters. The Red Sea is the most direct route to the Persian Gulf from the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, we have an Infowars.com article that quotes Fars news agency and Press TV. Iran threatens to stop Western ships if subjected to cargo inspection. We warn the U.S. and certain adventurous countries that they are tempted to inspect Iranian air and ship cargoes, we will take tough action against their ships in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman, said the Iranian parliament speaker. And it continues, ladies and gentlemen. So, we'll be discussing that with Max Keiser. Also, we've got an article up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com that I'm asking listeners to take action on today. Instead of letting Bobby Jindal complain and Haley Barbour complain of Mississippi, instead of just letting the governor of Florida complain about the feds blocking now for 60-plus days relief barges, foreign countries, the Dutch, the Norwegians, and others, and the Coast Guard going out and blocking state vessels from even putting up berms in front of estuaries. We need to have the states declare 9th and 10th Amendment powers and go out and just push the Coast Guard aside. Say, look, you're engaged in treason. You don't have jurisdiction. For 10 miles into the estuaries and the wetlands, the Coast Guard says they now control the state land and aren't letting people fish. They aren't letting them remove oil because you've got to have a permit to basically wipe your nose in this country because the Fed mafia has to control everything, and contracts to clean it up can only be given to White House cronies like Halliburton and others. But that's a side issue. We know now from the Coast Guard hearings with the survivors of the rigs and the head engineers, not just with BP, but Halliburton and the other companies that were out there. There were upwards of 5 companies working as contractors on the rig, that they told 2 months before, a month before, 2 weeks before, a week before, a few days before, and hours before. That's BBC, Associated Press. We have them all listed on my websites. That it was going to blow up, the well was going to come in and ignite. It was full of methane gas and other variants of natural gas, that they were dumping seawater into the 30,000-foot hole, never before done to supposedly pressurize it. Seawater weighs, 9 pounds a gallon instead of 15, 16, 17 for the mud or concrete they inject in. And I've gone and researched the engineering on this. The engineers said this will blow up, but BP said go ahead and do it. That's because they are the key globalist funding the carbon tax. Their whole carbon tax is in trouble, and there is no doubt this is a strategic attack to bring that carbon tax in. Now, we'll see if Max Keiser agrees with us. He, of course, brought out the fact that Goldman Sachs and others engaged a few months ago in financial terrorism with that 1,000-point 10-minute drop. Later, it came out that, indeed, they were in there manipulating. But I haven't asked Max his view on this. We'll see what he thinks about the BP/Obama situation and where this is going. Then we're going to talk to Max about the Iran situation and other things that the BP disaster is a distraction for. And then we'll talk about something that even bowled me over. The FCC had said they wanted to regulate the internet and tax it and tax alternative news to fund a, quote, government megaphone, government media, and to fund old line media that's dying. That had been in the old proposal. They came out Friday. It's in the AP, Financial Times of London. They have links to the FCC proposal, which is what they want to implement, a black box in your house that watches everything you do on TV and internet, all wired through it, whether it's cable, satellite, doesn't matter. And it surveils you, and it blocks what you can get. And then it takes over the ISPs. We already knew about that with cybersecurity, where all ISPs with 100 or more customers, and that's all ISPs out there, internet service providers, everything must be wired through on their end in government equipment. I work in radio. In 96, under the Telecommunications Act, they said that all radio and TV stations, the final piece of equipment at the transmitter, and I know engineers hate them because they add noise into the chain on radio and TV. Because you got to put this federal piece that's shortwave radio controlled where they can dial in and take over and just put a red screen up via computer command on TV and have shortwave broadcast with government announcements on it. But I digress. All ISPs, your home, everything will have this control box. Let's now go to Max Keiser of the Keiser Report. He has a program on Russia Today, BBC, Press TV, radio in London. I mean, this guy is everywhere, needs no introduction, here with us, and he'll be with us a little bit into the next hour. Max Keiser, great to have you here with us.
Alex Jones, good to be back.
Well, you just heard that rant. What's your take on it?
Well, to follow up on what we talked about back on the 1,000-point crash on May 6th, on your show, we talked about it in terms of being a domestic financial terrorist attack. Now, since that time, just on June 17th, I'm reading a report here, there was another of these attacks. The Washington Post stock doubled in 5 minutes. And this was yet another one of these attacks by program traders and high-frequency traders on Wall Street that are using their technology to manipulate markets. And so now, as I predicted, you would see more of these attacks, and going forward, you will see many, many more of these types of events where prices are skyrocketing or plummeting in 2 or 3 minutes as the people who run the computer programs are booking enormous profits and holding the entire system hostage.
Well, continue, Max.
Well, so that trend is firmly in place. You definitely have now the wherewithal, the ability to put in these enormous market-moving program trades that nobody is doing anything to really stop, and they put lots of money into the pockets of the same people who are financing all the elections and putting in the folks in Washington that we are further deregulating these markets. Now, to move over to the BP situation, this is remarkably the Wall Street Journal. I think this is important to get into the thinking here. The Wall Street Journal on June 15th, their take on it, check this out. They said the oil spill may end up lifting the GDP slightly. You see, Alex, it's not a catastrophe. It's actually it's an economic benefit for the people of the region and for the country. It's
command destruction, just like we're in depression, but the top 6 bank stocks are up, so they tell us the economy's good.
Right. According to J.P. Morgan Chase, the continuing oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico should end up adding growth to the U.S. economy, as the huge cleanup efforts are going to outweigh the negative factors, like the 1 million permanent job loss, the eco-terrorist catastrophe, loss of that entire region, and the dead zone that will result as a result of this. So this is the type of thinking that we're battling. It's perpetrated by the Wall Street Journal. This idea that everything adds to GDP growth, like an ecological disaster, like a war in Iran, a war in Iraq, all the $1 trillion defense budget, it all ends up adding to the GDP, and we should be celebrating it. The fact that it's ruining the economy and causing massive unemployment and massive social unrest, that's not a problem. As a matter of fact, the social unrest is going to equal more GDP growth as well, because after all, a lot of people are going to be out there, buying placards, protesting the government, and probably buying little, drums to beat in little drum circles as they.
But Max, what about my idea to have people lobby for grand jury investigations at the state level? Because we know the feds are bought and paid for by BP and Goldman Sachs, that of course owns a lot.